So like in this question, we have like in year n, the 300th day of the year is a Tuesday. We're given in year n plus 1, the 200th day is also a Tuesday. We want to know like what day of the week did the 100th day of year n minus 1 occur. So like to do this question, this is like a very classic like question as well, which is why it might be a good idea to go over it. Like it's very common in math competitions, they'll ask you questions about like dates. They might be like, okay, suppose like this day is like a Friday, then what day of the week will it be, like, 50 years from now or something like that, like a very common question. So in this case, we have in year n, the 300th day is a Tuesday, right? So the 300th day is a Tuesday, and this is year n. And then we're given in year n plus 1, the 200th day is also a Tuesday. So the thing we have to be careful about is like whether or not year n is like a leap year, right? So like because if n is a leap year, then there are going to be 366 days in a year. But if it's not a leap year, so if it's a leap year, then there are going to be 366 days in a year. Otherwise, if it's not leap year, then there are going to be 365 days in a year. So now we have to like consider these two possibilities, right? Because we don't know if year n is a leap year or it's not a leap year. So like let's first take a look at the case. Let's say like what if it's not a leap year, right? So if it's not a leap year, then since the 300th day is a Tuesday, then there are 65 days left in that year, right? And then we look at the 200th day in the next year. So we add 200. So we know that the 200th day in year n plus 1 is like 265 days ahead of the 300th day in year n. So, but the thing is, like, we know that like the days of the week like repeat in cycles of 7, right? But like notice that like if the 200th day in year n plus 1 is also a Tuesday, then like the gap, like the number of days between the number of days between this day and like this day has to be like a multiple of 7 in order for them to be on the same day of the week, since they're both a Tuesday. But the reason this doesn't work here is because like 265 is like not a multiple of 7. Like 265, if you divide it by 7, you would get like 30, not 37 with a remainder of 6. And like that shows us that like the 200th day in year n plus 1 would not be a Tuesday. And the reason that's important is because now that tells us that year n must be a leap year. So that tells us that year n plus 1 has to be a leap year. So now if year n plus 1, or if year n is a leap year, that means there are going to be 366 days in that year. And if you wanted to like verify, like you could easily do that, right? Because if the 300th day in year n is a Tuesday, if it's the 300th day right now, then there are 66 days left in that year. And then we're looking at the 200th day in the next year. So 66 plus 200, that tells us that there's a gap of 266 days. And if you were to do 266 divided by like 7, then you would get like 35 or 38 with like no remainder. So like since there's no remainder, that tells us that like both days are going to be on a Tuesday, because the number of days between those 2 days is like divisible by 7. So now like to finish the problem, like if we know that year n is a leap year, then that tells us year n minus 1 cannot be a leap year, right? Because leap years repeat every 4 years. So we know year n minus 1 is not a leap year. And we want to find what day of the week it is for the 100th day on year n minus 1, right? So from the 300th day in year n, like if we were to go backwards in time, right, then that's going to be like there are 300 days left. There are 300th days like in year n, and there are going to be 365 minus 100 days that you have to consider in year n minus 1, right? So then if you were to like do the math, this is equal to 300 plus 265. So that equals 565. So essentially what this means is that there are 565 days in the year n, the 300th day in year n, and the 100th day in year n minus 1. There are going to be 565 days in between. So if you were to like divide 565 by 7, then this would give us 80 with a remainder of 5. So that tells us that like there are going to be 80 like cycles, 80 weeks, and then 5 days. So if the 300th day in year n is a Tuesday, then we have to go 5 days backward to get the 100th day in year n minus 1. So then you would have Monday, then Sunday, then Saturday, then Friday, then Thursday. So since we have to go back 5 times because we have a remainder of 5, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, or well, so we would have to go back. We have to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the answer would be like Thursday. Okay, yeah. So like the general idea for this problem was like for these kinds of questions, it's very common kind of question about like days of the week. Just like the general strategy is to like find like the number of weeks and number of days between some number of days. Like and then like essentially like the magic number is like 7. Like you always want to find like the remainder when some number is divided by 7 so that like you can because you know every week has 7 days. So like if you divide some number by 7 and you get the remainder, that kind of tells you like how many times you have to go after the current day. So like in this case, right, we had that in year n, the 300th day was a Tuesday. And after that, we kind of did some logical deduction and we found that year n had to be a leap year. And since year n was a leap year, that means year n minus 1 could not be a leap year. And then the number of days between the 100th day in year n minus 1 and the 300th day in year n, we found out that equaled 565. And when we divided by 7, we found a remainder of 5, which told us that the 100th day in year n minus 1 is 5 days of the week before the 300th day in year n. So then we kind of like counted 5 days back, and then we got the answer was Thursday.